about this program, it was brought about by Janet Elder. The librarian here got a grant to pay for this program and another one. So we're going to start with Canal Era Personalities. Now, we can't talk about the canal without talking about Jacob Wertz. The canal basin was supposedly to be in Frankstown because there was 3 feeder streams that put water in it, which the Eastern Reservoir. The story is that Jacob Wertz either refused he refused $10,000 or he wanted $10,000 for the piece of ground. I just recently discovered that in 1814, Jacob purchased 260 acres of ground for less than $9,000. So Jacob is mentioned in Africa's History of 1883, but his name is not mentioned because he was still alive when the book was written. So there's no mention of his name. So this little map here shows the Eastern Reservoir. This is Hollidaysburg to show you that the water would come from the reservoir and feed the canal at Frankstown. So John Blair formed a group to move the canal basin to Hollidaysburg. The funny thing about this happening was when they had the grand opening for the canal, there was no building big enough to have the party. So they had to go to Frankstown in the Denlinger Hotel. Another twist of fate. So in 1830, there are 72 people living in Hollidaysburg in 1830. This is when the canal is being planned. A twist of fate. Later on, in 1849, the PRR is searching for property in Hollidaysburg for the shops. With no luck, in 1849, they buy the Robeson farm containing 220 acres in Altoona for about $13,000. Now, recently I found an article that in the 1940s where they said the shops were going to be between Hollidaysburg and Duncansville. So this would be Martin's up through that way the whole way up. Our first personality is Christian Garber. 1775 to 1884, he's a postmaster, merchant, legislator, and a contractor. In 1807, 1816, he was one of Hollidaysburg's first postmasters. In 1816 and 17, he was in the Pennsylvania State House of Representatives. 1824 to 26, he was a state senator. 1830, he buys 167 acres from Mrs. Mary Somerville, who was the daughter of William Holliday at Gatesport. So, here's 1830, the railroad's starting a little bit, so he's trying to buy up ground. In 1832 to 40, he's a contractor at the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal. In 1838, there's a lawsuit because he only paid like $700 for this property, 167 acres. Him and another politician. So in 1884, he dies, owning 38 town lots, plus he had other property around town. And the interesting thing about Christian Garber, he died before the C. Blair County formed. So he's kind of been left out of the history. So that's why these are people that fell through the cracks. But the remarkable thing is, in his will, he mentioned that this Charlotte is actually his daughter, out of wedlock. And so he took care of her. But in his will, he mentioned he owned up to it. Next is the Honorable George R. McFarlane, a founder of the Philadelphia Women's and Medical College. In 1839, he was the editor of the Democratic Standard and the Huntington Gazette. 1846 to 48, he's the Associate Blair County Judge. And in 1852, he's killed in an accident in his foundry. A chain breaks and a 2,500-pound casting falls on him, and they said he expired shortly after that. But the interesting thing is he planned to run for the governor of Pennsylvania in 1853. Now this is a picture of his foundry. Here's Penn Street and Juniata. There's the foundry on the corner. This would be where the bridge is now, the new bridge right here. There's his foundry. And it also said the location of the foundry was the passenger station for the Portage Railroad. Here is his desk mask and his face, which is on the courthouse. But I was really really surprised that this man from Hollidaysburg was going to run for governor. Okay. Most of this information I came about as I was doing research on the 2 U.S. hotels. This is when I started, I found John Daugherty. And I started all this stuff, and I thought, boy, what a guy this is. He does all this, he invents stuff, and he owns a hotel and all this. And I found out there's two. So this is Whiskey John, the innkeeper, 1795 to 1868. In 1833, he's an Alexander's innkeeper. In 1834, he's in Hollidaysburg in Charles Cox's house, which was later the Pennsylvania House and the American House, which is where Murphy's was. G.C. Murphy's store. In 1837, a large brick building with no address turns up. And recently, I have to update this, in 1839 is the first year that he paid tax on a hotel and an empty lot on Juniata Street. So that's the first U.S. hotel. In 1853, there's a sheriff's sale, and his wife buys him out. In 1863, Rose dies, and the U.S. hotel is sold, and then it progressed through other owners until 1871 when it was a fire. In 1868, Whiskey John dies. Peculiar thing I found out about Whiskey John was he was a good Irishman, and he had a white horse, and he attended every funeral in town. I don't know why. This is the other John Daugherty, 1803 to 1886. John the Agitator and Forwarding John. The Agitator was because when they were building the canal, he was agitating the legislators to get things moving, let's get this done. And Forwarding John is because a couple things which I'll explain here in a minute. So in 1831, John Daugherty, John the Agitator, was a contractor for the Portage Railroad, helped build the Portage Railroad. 1835, he forms the Reliance Transportation Company. So, not all the canal boats came apart. So, the ones that didn't come apart, they had to be unloaded, put on the Portage Railroad cars, and moved up over the Portage Railroad. So, John invented a form of a container system. I don't know if it was wooden boxes or what it was. They had small cranes, but it was a container system, and these containers fit on the Portage Railroad cars. In 1838, he invents and builds 6 iron canal boats. They're lighter, so you can haul more. They're not as heavy as the wooden canal boats, because the wooden canal boats would soak up the water and get heavier. In 1838, the Reliance Transportation Company is dissolved. In 1838, the Portable Boat Company is formed, which is the canal boats that came apart. In 1843, he patents the sectional canal boats. In 1844, he becomes part owner of the Hollidaysburg Democratic Standard. And if you're in Hollidaysburg today, the Democratic Standard was printed across the street from OIP down on Montgomery Street, the second building.
Cool.
In 1848, the railroads come and the canal's done. April of 1848, the first train pulls into Tyrone. So actually, the canal is only from maybe Alexandria to Hollidaysburg. That's it. In 1848. In 1840, he moves to Mount Union. Like I said, the railroad's coming. And I have to check the dates, but I was told the reason he moved there was so he could hook the broad top, which is narrow gauge, to the PRR to get the coal out. In 1849, he's a co-founder of the town of Mount Union, and he's buried in Huntington Cemetery. This is Whiskey John and John the Agitator's obituaries, and it mentions in here that he was Daugherty was the proprietor of the United States Hotel for a number of years. He was confirmed upon him by the title. He was known as Whiskey John. Daugherty was a man of general impulses and strict integrity, and we doubt whether any man ever went to his grave with more friends or fewer enemies. So, John the Agitator dies in 1886. The death of John Daugherty of Mount Union. In his early days of the Canal and Railroad, he was one of the most prominent and energetic among the forwarding merchants. Although he long ago lost his money, one of his backers was Peter Schoenberger. And if those who don't know who Peter Schoenberger was, he died in 1853. He owned 3 iron furnaces, and at the time of his death in 1854, he was worth $7 million, which today would be about $270 million. And that was one of his backers. When he died in 1854, John the Agitator lost one of his backers. So, let us indulge the hope that he has gone to a better country than this, and where all his faculties will be full scope and all the energy will find active, congenial employment. And so I guess he's going to work in the other world. Limestone Yank, another character from the canal. He was a canal boat captain, although canal boats weren't very big, maybe 3 people, I guess. He was a captain. His other name was Limestone Yank, and he was like the modern day New Enterprise Stone and Lime, because in 1870 he opened 2 lime kilns in Frankstown, and they operated even after he died up into the late 1920s. Right where the little used car lot is beside Nick's, there were 2 lime kilns right there. They burnt lime to spread on the farmers to spread on the fields. In 1878 he sued the Pennsylvania Canal. He thought he was losing money, that the canal didn't run efficiently enough, so he sued the railroad. Haven't found how this lawsuit went out, but he sued them for the money that he thought he lost because it was so inefficient. In 1879, he built a 40-foot steamboat for the 3 Mile Lake. Now, those of you who don't know about the 3 Mile Lake, it's part of the canal system, and it ran from Ganister to Flowing Spring. And because of this lake, that's how Point View got its start. But a 40-foot steam paddle boat. In 1882, he buys 50 acres of the Bell Farm for $90 an acre. In 1885, he purchases the first area steam drill. In 1888, he dissolves Blackburn and Manning Partnership. And in 1890, his son, William Manning, is killed in an explosion at Carlum. Carlum is along the rails to trails between Mount Etna and Water Street. I don't know if there's any roads to it, but Carlum is short for carload of lime. But they set up a charge, and his son didn't juke, and he caught a rock. In 1899, he buys 1,500 acres from Point View to the Loop. This is what's now Loft Mountain. And Jesse Hartman ended up with this property. In 1889, he had quarries in Frankstown, Tyrone, McKee, and Williamsburg. And then below Williamsburg, almost to Water Street, was Carlo. And when he was 82 years old, there was a newspaper article, he was on his roof cleaning his flue. Big and Tall Charlie. Charlie Raugh, 1850 to 1823. He was a son of William Raugh. William Raugh was the owner of the Juniata Brewery. If you're in the dining hall at the U.S. Hotel, the part of the hall towards Frankstown would have been the Juniata Hotel on the right, if you're facing towards the courthouse. On the left would have been the Gromiller and the Gruenwald Hotel. And then the bar wasn't built until 1905, and then the current U.S. Hotel was built finished in 1887. So, in 1856, the coal train, he was a kid. He was 6 years old. They were playing the tracks, and they moved the train without signaling, cut his feet off. It was a lawsuit. He received $4,000. But he had 2 sets of legs. Long ones during the week and short ones on Sundays. You would think you would want to be taller on Sunday, right? And shorter during, although, I don't know, maybe he thinks he was dominating with his taller legs during the week in his business. The father and son had many legal problems with the Juniata Brewery because there's many articles in the paper. They must have been like a distributor, but they'd say, so-and-so was there seen carrying a keg of beer, an individual taking it home, which that was a no-no then. This poor guy, Jacob Gruenwald, is the Rodney Dangerfield of the canal. 1827 to 1887. He's a brewer. He worked for the Roughs at the Juniata Brewery. He was also an innkeeper. In 1869, he immigrated to the U.S. In 1876, he marries Mrs. Catherine Grohmiller. Her husband, Engelbert, died, and they ran the Grohmiller Hotel, which was, again, if you're facing the courthouse, would be the left part of the dining hall at the U.S. Hotel. So it was the Grohmiller Hotel, then it was the Grundy Hotel. In 1876 to 1888, he operates the Gruenwald Hotel. In 1883, he purchases the lot, which would be 146. He purchases Hollidaysburg lot 146 to build the second United States hotel. And when this one's completed, in 1887, January the 1st, that was 16 years that there was no U.S. hotel, because the one on the other corner burnt in 1871. In 1887, August the 15th and 19th, Jacob and Catherine both died in the hotel. A little side story, when I found Catherine's obituary, it said that she had abdominal problems. And my friend, Al Brinza, who's doing the ghost stories, had sensed that a woman died in one of the rooms with abdominal problems.
Oh my gosh.
Doo-doo-doo. So, if you read anything, James Grohmiller built the U.S. hotel, the current U.S. hotel. But, actually, Jacob and Catherine Grundy built it. But he's the son-in-law of Jacob. So that's why I call him the Rodney Dangerfield, because they give Jim the credit, but they only ran it for 8 or 9 months.
I know it's not time for questions yet, but we are presently at the Hollidaysburg Area Public Library where we're recording this talk. And right across the street is Green Lawn Cemetery. And there's a very remarkable stone there that shows an angel that is draped over a large cross, and it says Grohmiller in very large letters. And can you shed some light on that?
He's buried here, and then Catherine is buried with her first husband in St. Mary's, and her stone says Catherine Grohmiller.
So the Grohmiller that's across the street from the library.
That's the son. That's James.
So that's the one that's at the very bottom here on the slide.
Green Lawn Cemetery is connected with
St. Mary's on the other side.
what's the one on the hill? St. Michael's?
This one is St. Michael's.
Yes, Green Lawn.
is St. Michael's.
It wasn't there when Engelbert Grohmiller died to be buried there, I don't believe. I don't think it's that old. He might be in St. Mary's.
That's your homework, people who are watching this. Go
Find your grave.
take a walk right up across the library. Take a look at that Grohmiller stone because it's beautiful.
This is my connection to the canal. This is my great-great-grandfather, Benjamin Franklin Fonner. He worked as a boatman. He rode the mules that pulled the canal boats. And he also worked for the railroad. And then later on, he was in the Boatmen's Association, which was the old men that worked in the canal, got together to talk stories, whatever. All the pictures he's setting and his wife is standing. His daughter, who's my great-grandmother, was 4'8". So that's why. And what's interesting is in the story, it says when he started riding the mules, they would put the mule up to the fence. He would climb the fence to get on the mule because he wasn't big enough to climb on by himself.
Oh my gosh.
So he worked for the PR, for the canal and the PRR. This is the interesting part. This is the house that I grew up in Geeseytown. When my great-grandfather died in 1956, we moved into my parents bought the house and we moved in. That road right there, that's the canal bed. So, in 1872, my great-grandfather, walked a mule right past here with supposedly the last canal boat, which was the Catherine, and built by the Bleilers in Frankstown. So he walked right through here in 1872. In 1928, his daughter and her husband buy this house, which is built by the Bleilers in 1874. The canal shuts down in 1872, so the Bleilers now go from building canal boats to building houses. This house and the house next door, which was my father's home, were both built by the Bleilers in the 1870s, again after the canal closed down. So that's where he walked through here, and his daughter, about 50 years later, lived in that house. And my dad would joke with the neighbor boys he'd say, if it's rainy out and damp, if you come down, you can smell the mule manure on the trail. I think that's it. So this is just a picture of Hollidaysburg in 1863. This is showing all the foundries and the furnaces and the rolling mills in Hollidaysburg. There's the first U.S. hotel, and right up this street, that house right there, that's where my wife and I live. So it's a duplex. It was there in 1862. So this is east, or west, I'm sorry. This is a west view, and now we'll go here. Here's 1863. There's the first courthouse. Here's the foundry, where McFarlane died. This is the Springer Brewery. There's the scale house. And the Bell, yeah, right here. That's the Bell Mansion, which is where the Methodist Church is on Allegheny Street.
Jim, can you give us these two slides? Because I'm sure people would like to see them close up.
They're probably on my Facebook page.
Okay, everybody go to Jim's Facebook page.
Okay.
Okay.
So now, additional research areas. The Blair County Courthouse faces, which you can be seen on the library Facebook page.
And also currently in the library itself,
Okay.
near the periodicals.
It's about 54 minutes. Very interesting. Blair County Cemeteries. Bennington and Glen White. They were two towns where they made coke. There was one more town which I haven't researched yet. That's Bakerton. Also, Hollidaysburg, hotels, houses, and breweries. There was only 2 breweries. There must have been 20 hotels in the town. Right now, that's currently on hold because I'm trying to get access to the liquor license from 1846 to 1891. The Petersburg branch of the PRR. Point View, which was Clem Snyder, if anybody knows. He was a well-known pharmacist, him and his father, Jacob, in Hollidaysburg, and had a brother who was a lawyer. But Point View was like an elite. There was only 15 cottages. Reed from Altoona was a jeweler. Keith's from Altoona, they were there. Also still doing research on the U.S. hotel. A couple of questions I cannot get answered. Facebook pages, Ancestral Hollidaysburg Redux. Now, a lot of these, they're closed groups you have to request to join. So, Historic Hollidaysburg Inc., which the Historic Hollidaysburg is rejuvenated. Josh Judah's in there, and they're open Tuesdays from 12 to 2 or 11 to 2. They're open Tuesday afternoons. They're doing a house tour this year, $5, if the virus lets us. Blair County Genealogical Society. There's also the Blair County Genealogy. And what's nice is the Ancestral Hollidaysburg Redux. If you go on there, once you join, if you have a question about Hollidaysburg, somebody will answer it. Forgotten Families of the Hollidaysburg Presbyterian Cemetery. Most of the prominent people are buried in the Presbyterian Cemetery. And as I do research on people, if I find information on them, instead of putting it in a file, I go to a website called Find a Grave. And I post pictures, obituaries, and things like that. You're allowed to put 5 pictures for each person. So I post that on, so that's a place you can go, is Find a Grave, it's free. Historic Frankstown Township. Frankstown Township's very old, 1775. All or parts of 11 townships came from Frankstown Township. It was that large. The first township supervisors were Cassidy from Norrie, one of the Holidays, and one of the Moores from Scotch Valley. So that's how big it was. And you know you are from Duncansville, Hollidaysburg. It's another site. It's a little, there's a little bit of everything on there, but there's some history and stuff on it and anything. Any place on here, if you have any questions, if you post it, somebody will answer it. And there's a lot of information you can look. And a little thing I just discovered on Facebook, at the top of the page, there's a picture. Well, underneath there's a bar. On the right-hand side, there's a magnifying glass. If you click on that magnifying glass, you can type something you want to search in that and click on it, just like Google. And it'll search the page for any particular item that you're looking for. And that is it.
Yay! Yay! This is the part where there would normally be wild clapping and tons of
20,000
people.
questions.
Woo! And so there are
All right.
questions. Of course, there's going to be questions. So, Jim, can you just tell us a little bit about the presentations, the places that you've given this talk? Some of the places.
This is about the 6th time. I had canceled once in Williamsburg this spring because of the COVID. I just did it last Tuesday for the Hollidaysburg Community Partnership Group. Huntington in January, and I've done it here. This is the 2nd time here for this one. And I have a whole list of programs.
And each time you give a program, you've learned some more things, so you add more.
Yes, yes. There's things in here that I didn't know when I did this program in January.
So some of your sources when you're researching, what are some of the places you find your information?
The Blair County Genealogical Society. One of the biggest libraries between Pittsburgh and Harrisburg. Over 10,000 square feet, over 6,000 feet of bookshelves, and we are unique in that we have the county records there. You can come to the society and look at deeds, wills, a few autopsies, maps.
Awesome.
Yes.
So let's see. If people are looking specifically for Hollidaysburg information, should they also go to the courthouse? Are there some online sources if people are watching this and they're far away but they love Hollidaysburg?
There's no online county records for Blair County. Some of the other counties there are on a website called FamilySearch.org, which has Huntington and Bedford wills and deeds and mortgages and some land records. But that's FamilySearch.org. That's a free site. That's great because Huntington was formed in 1886, 76, 86. So that saves me running the courthouse. I can do it online at home.
Oh, awesome.
Yes.
And are there any online resources for the Genealogical Society if you don't live close enough to physically come here?
The only thing on our website, which we're going to have a new website on January the 1st. So if you go look at the old trashy one, it's going to be replaced January 1st. There's a list of some of the holdings in the library, but the most important thing is there's under library holdings and obituary, there's a 618,000 name index that goes back to 1805, which is, we have indexed a lot of newspapers, and you click and it'll put the surname in the box, and then the list will come up alphabetically, and the date that appears there is the date that appears in the paper. That's not the date the person died. It's a date that appeared in the paper, then the name of the newspaper. Some of our volumes are marked as volume numbers and page numbers, like A or 22. So some of them will say volume and page number. And if you're from out of town, I think we only charge $2 for an obituary, plus postage. And if you send a SASE, we'll cut that cost out. But it's $2 as a form on the website, $2 per obituary.
And what is the website again?
bcgslibrary.org.
bcgslibrary.org.
Yes, that's the website. And we have a Facebook page.
Ooh.
So go on there and like us.
And is it Blair County Genealogical Society?
Blair County Genealogical Society, Inc.
Inc. on Facebook.
Yes.
Jim, it's been such a pleasure having you today. Thank you for coming into the library in this socially distanced wonderland that we have in front of us here. And I suppose that this is the part where you could tell us what some of the other topics are that people have requested from you that you might be interested in giving again.
Always do cemetery programs. Very interested in cemeteries because not many people know that most cemeteries have a minimum of 10% with no stones. And the Genealogical Society has photographed every cemetery in the county except Grandview and Altoona, Grandview and Tyrone, and Oak Grove. Most of those, and the photographs are digital and they're at the library. So I do a program which I have to redo it, but I have a program on the U.S. Hotel, a couple cemetery programs, which is specifically, if you want me to come talk to an area, I'll do like maybe 3 townships, and I try to put up a picture of the cemetery, a map, and then how many people were buried in it, when the first burial is, when the last, and when it was formed, and how many people, if I've researched it, how many people buried there with no stones.
Wow. So, people, you've heard it here. If you want Jim to give another talk, you should go to the Blair County Genealogical Society's webpage where Jim's contact information can be found. Do you want to give us that here, your email?
My email is printer@bcgslibrary.org.
And so you should email Jim and say, we want more, we want more.
Yes.
Jim, thanks so much.
I appreciate you asking me here tonight. Thank you.
And thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. Bye.